when I first drew these mushrooms, let's see if I can find the piece of paper. Oh, here we are. Okay, I sort of drew them like that, and there was all this space around them, which really, wasn't very satisfying. Can you see it? I'll just bring it down a bit more. So they were on the plate, and I decided then it'd be far better to actually move the plate closer to me and have more of a bird's eye view, if you like. So my eye level's high and I'm looking down on the plate, looking down on the mushrooms. I just thought it was far more interesting. I've also moved the composition over to the left of this little piece of paper. So, you've got a bit of space on the right. It's often better if you don't centralize your main subject, but you shift it off center slightly. So do think about that as you're drawing this new subject up. I don't know how I have had, I think, 3 or 4 pieces of work in from last week, and we'll have a look at those in due course. But I think just if we, all of us now, just spend 5 or 10 minutes getting your subject onto your piece of paper that you've prepared, and so that it's, there's no shading, it's just a light outline on the watercolor paper. I've got, as I say, that, well, if we just, I don't want to re-spotlight my subject, but the beetroots are different positions. I'm seeing the back of one turned to the side and one coming towards me. So there's a certain amount of visual variety, even though they're all the same subject. Okay, so I'll leave you to get on with your drawing for a minute, and I think we'll give ourselves 5-10 minutes, and then I want everybody to be at a stage where they can begin to paint what they're doing, and we'll have a look at what everybody's done in terms of your composition. Okay, so if you just carry on for the minute, and if you've done your drawing, then you could be preparing your washes for your subject. Greg, you have just mixed one little color, and it's as dark as it's going to be initially, and that's that one there, which is kind of what my beetroot looked like. They've got a slight red tinge to them, but certainly not as red as the sort of stalky bits that come down, and certainly not the color of the beetroot once you take the skin off. So it's a sort of earthy color, really. And I'm going to have to use a device that I did with my mushrooms. So if you just want to just look at the mushrooms again, please, just for a second. These were the first 2 mushrooms I painted, and I deliberately pulled out some yellow on these mushrooms because yellow is part of the warm area of the color wheel. Listen to it. It's all these colors from yellow through to purple are what we call warm colors. Okay, and it applies to both color wheels, whether it's cool or warm. That we would consider all those, the yellow to the purples are essentially the warm range of colors. So if you want your subject to appear, like if you've got 3 things that are identical, like I have, you have to use a few visual tricks. And this is sort of similar to aerial perspective, which we've talked a little bit about in landscape painting, where you make things get bluer as they get further away from you. And I slightly use this device here. So I've put touches of raw sienna, which is a nice warm color, touches of yellow onto the fronts of these mushrooms that are closer to me. And I have made these at the back slightly more neutral. So do think about that when you're painting. Don't just mechanically copy the color of the vegetable in front of you, but think how am I going to make that look like with you, Greg? You've got 3 tomatoes.
Yeah.
The one at the back might not be quite as red as the 2 at the front. You might make it have a slightly cooler feel about it. I doesn't mean to say you're going to paint it blue, but you might go for a red that has a tiny touch of blue in it.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? So, or
Yeah.
you can, the other thing you can do, of course, is to make the vegetables that are behind slightly paler. They've still got to work in their own right, but the strength of the focus should really be in the foreground. So the vegetable that's closest to you, that's why I should say start with that one first, is the one that you give the most importance to, really, in terms of the strength of the color and the warmth of it. It may not be warm, it may be completely cool, but you've got to drop some sort of warm color in there. Okay, so I'll let you proceed, and we will stop in about 20 minutes and just have a look at what people sent in this week. So when you're starting your first one, if you want to watch me do one, that's fine. If you don't want to watch me, then just get on with it. I'm going to lift off some of the graphite, that's the pencil line, because as I said last week, I don't like it showing up through the paint. And even though you can rub it off afterwards, you never quite get rid of it. And I'm also going to dampen that front vegetable that I'm starting with, just with pure water. So I'm deliberately going to do wet into wet technique as I start. It's got a tiny bit of colour in because I washed my brush off in the water, so you should be able to just about see it. And even at this stage, I might indicate some of those funny stems. They're very chunky. It's a bit like an octopus, this vegetable. Right, so that's my first bit of painting of the beetroot, and it's just in water, not in colour yet. I'm going to also wet this one over here so that I can have the 2 on the go at the same time, and they're both in the same sort of plane. One, you know, they're both level with each other. One's not more further back than the other. Again, I'm going to just dampen it with water. It's got a slight hint of the colour that where I washed it off on it. Right, if you just want to have a look at what I've done on mine, just for a minute, I've literally just put some water on these 2 beetroot. I know you're busy getting on with your own work, but 1 or 2 people have commented to me that they miss what I say because they're actually busy painting. And in a way, it's probably better to go more slowly and just try and let me share with you what I'm doing, and then carry on. Okay, so just remember that when you wet it, that um, when you first put the water on, it's probably too wet to drop the colour in. This is already, I'm just touching it with the back of my hand. It's damp now. The other one is wet. So I would suggest that it's ready for me to start applying a bit of wash to it. So I've got the colour mixed up over here. This is the colour I've mixed, just to show you what it looks like. Okay, and I've mixed a fair bit of it because I know I'm going to be using quite a lot of it. And then I'm going to just look at that shape, and I know the darkest part is on the left, but I just want to leave, there's not really any highlights because it's not that kind of a texture. It's very matte, the texture of the beetroot. So I'm just going to literally plop the colour in as it is. So in other words, I'm not leaving any white paper on this because it's not really appropriate to the subject. Now there is also, as I look at it, a little bit of a sort of yellowy brown colour. So I've mixed some of that too. I've used some raw sienna for it. And I'm just going to drop a little tiny bit of that in as well. So this is really wet into wet. So I'm allowing the two colours to mix. And similarly on my other beetroot, I'm going to put some yellow in here. Yeah, raw sienna rather, not yellow, raw sienna. And then drop the maroon colour in.